Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today, I have a really special guest I'd like to introduce to you. He has been such a great role model for our kids and many other kids in the community. He's a martial artist, as well as a business owner, Mr. Lucas Geller. He is the owner of Breaking Wave Martial Arts in Albany in the Latham area. And in this interview, I talked to him about his journey of becoming a martial artist, his interest in China, his interest in owning a business and educating youth and kids and giving them confidence and helping them become who they're meant to be. So, without further ado, here is an interview. Hope you enjoy it.
Well,
Well,
thank you for having me. I know we talked about doing this for a long time, so
yes,
great to
absolutely. I always
come on.
wanted to hear more about your story, so thank you so much for taking the
Thank you.
time to chat with me. And part of the reason why I do this is to kind of show that there's lots of different careers, right? That like kids
Hmm.
can choose. And I was always curious about your journey too, of just like having a martial arts studio, being a business owner. I
Yeah.
guess my first question is just like, did you always envision doing that, or was that something
S-
that just kind of came about?
Yeah. So it's actually talking about careers and different careers. It's funny because my grandfather was very successful in like corporate, a corporate career. So working in media and advertising and, in Manhattan. And then my father also was a business owner and did architectural millwork. So installations of woodwork in Manhattan. Doing like, for example, Tiffany's, Hotel Sofitel, Scholastic books. If you go inside their lobbies, all the woodwork. So for like big um, commercial projects in the city, and then I did kung fu, and it's a
Very
little
different.
different. Yeah,
Yeah.
but what's kind of interesting was that actually my family was always very supportive of it,
Mhm.
and because my grandfather wanted to be an artist, he loved drawing, and
Mhm.
eventually that became um, a career in uh, advertising. And then my father actually said he didn't want to have a traditional path either, and he
Mhm.
chose woodworking and carpentry and working with his hands. And he moved out of the city with my mom, and they moved up to the countryside of upstate New York,
Mhm.
and just working with his hands doing woodwork. And that was also kind of different than what people thought he had done for my grandfather. And then that
Wow.
turned into something more maybe corporate for
Mhm.
him. And then mine hasn't become corporate, which I'm very comfortable with, which I'm happy with. But also, they were always very supportive of me doing something that was unique to my interests and passion. So, they did kind of encourage me to go to school. So I do have my master's degree from OSU, Ohio State, and that was part
Oh,
of the
okay.
thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
like I'm surprised just because I grew up in Cleveland. So
yeah,
a
I
lot of
remember.
my friends went to OSU. So I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's a great connection. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. So like I told them I wanted to go to China after high school, and they said, absolutely, you're going, do what you want, but apply to college, get into college, apply to defer for the year, and
Oh,
that so they were very involved, and then even my time in China that was arranged through Beijing Sports University initially, and so it there was sort of I would say like a behind the scenes sort of directional, assistance from parents who were involved and cared, like willing to give freedom, but also, there to kind of make sure things were, in order. Because
sure.
I do think it's probably easy to get, if you're very passionate about something, that it's
Mhm.
wonderful, but if it's maybe less than mainstream or more obscure, maybe it's also, being young, it's easy to get a little lost along the way and how you want to
Mhm.
pursue it, and maybe having some assistance is a good thing.
Yeah, wow. That's so wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that you had such great support.
Yeah.
Like when you were doing Kung Fu, I know you loved doing that all while you were in, is it like elementary, middle school, high school?
So
Was
actually, I
it
didn't
really
get
big?
involved in the kung fu until like high school almost.
Oh,
I
okay.
started very young in martial arts, and then I stopped. And I did other sports, soccer and ice hockey, and just general kid stuff. And then about 13 years old, opened up a little shoebox with all my old videos and uniforms and everything, and it like illuminated a part of my brain that I didn't know was like, dormant. And so I decided, like, I was like, I have to explore this all over again, and just, very excited from that moment, and kind of kept going forward with it. And I liked that I had done other activities too, like skateboarding. And it's not that other activities, I do feel like, I kind of wanted some structure. I kind of wanted some discipline, and martial arts can be a creative outlet, but it also did give me a structure that I liked working within, a routine, getting up at a certain time, practicing at a certain time. And so I think that it was a very healthy outlet. During my teenage years, it kept me very like focused, and not getting too off track, or, because of um, that routine and discipline.
Yeah, well, now that you mentioned that, I know a lot of your students have been accepted to really top
Yeah,
schools as well, and I think that's really a correlation of that discipline and hard work and having that like also mentorship from you.
yeah. It is very interesting. We don't have many black belts in my school. We're not like a big franchise school with hundreds of kids, and every year we graduate 20 black belts, and it's a little more modest in scale. And so, I have maybe 20 black belts over the last. And so I often ask myself, they're so exceptional in my mind. I really enjoy my students. And um, I wonder sometimes, is it the chicken or the egg? Did they, because
Oh,
of martial arts and their black belt, did they help them excel, or were these just special kids to begin with? And I was just lucky enough to get them involved in my program. And, according to them, they give me a lot of credit. So that makes me feel like I did have an effect, or a role, um, uh, with my involvement. But man, it is hard to know, because they are just such awesome kids to begin with. And I felt like nothing was going to stop them. I was just lucky to be cross paths on that journey. But yeah, so, and
I'm
it
sure
gives
it
me
has
hope
something
too.
to do with it.
Yeah. But it's exciting because, I've got young kids, as you do too, and now I see what they can do, and all the different paths and the different directions. Like, again, you know, we're not, we don't have experience. I don't have experience putting my own kids through this routine. So it's nice to see what others have done and where they've gone, and it gives you some sense of what's possible.
Absolutely. And I think, having my kids in your school, I definitely felt like there's a structure, but there's also like that fun element,
Yeah,
which they really enjoy because they did do other martial arts before as well. And some of them is like a little bit more just on the discipline side.
sure.
So yeah, I just want to mention that too, that
Thank
like
you.
they really enjoy that environment where it's, yes, there's discipline, yes, there's structure, but there's a lot more freedom compared to like a
Yeah.
lot of other studios that we went to.
It's I think it's partly because I did martial arts. Maybe I got more into martial arts as a young adult, and I was already very self-motivated. I didn't need people to yell at me, or people to tell me to try. And I liked doing it. So I used to always practice, put my music on, and I liked going to practice to be with my friends. And we would all, hang out after practice. And so when I made, with our studio, I feel like it's just kind of based on my experience. I want kids to want to be there. I don't need them to bow to me because I told them to bow to me. I hope over some time they feel a sense of mutual respect. And but I
Um,
do like to play music and let them enjoy the practice, because, you know in reality, if they're not enjoying it, they won't come, and they're not going to succeed long term with what we want them to achieve.
Yeah, that's very true, I think, for anything that they study, right?
Yeah. Yes. So I studied Chinese language, um,
Mhm.
and people ask, a lot of my Chinese friends in China were asking me, "Oh, how did you learn?" And I
Mm,
told them, just for me, the same thing as martial arts. I just really like it. Like so it's easy to learn when you're, a language. If you like reading the books, do you like watching the movie? Do you like listening to the music? Do you like talking to people? Do you, and then there's the actual studying side. Do you enjoy doing that too? So, you
mm.
can't enjoy everything all the time, but I think there has to be an underlying foundation of like appreciation and enjoyment. I'm sure even with music,
Yeah,
if you force it, and maybe a kid will take to it, but probably better to foster a sense of interest and joy if possible.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I want to know more about your time in China too, because
Yeah.
like you didn't study Chinese until you were in college, right? Or
Actually,
is that
so I
overview?
fell in love with all things Chinese in high school.
Okay,
Like
so you
it
started
was like,
already learning.
yeah. And so what I
Yeah.
used to do is I lived in like a very very small town in upstate New York,
Mhm.
and my parents would drive me to Albany, which is had there was a martial arts school here with husband and wife instructors from
Mhm.
China,
Oh,
and
okay.
I used to um, I would come up one day a week, and it would be I would take a private lesson for 1 hour with my teacher's wife, usually,
Okay.
and then just in Chinese. And it
Oh,
was
okay.
not structured. She didn't know how to speak Chinese. I mean, she didn't know how to, she wasn't like a Chinese teacher of any sort or
Yeah.
educated in any
It's
way.
like
So
conversation kind of. Yeah.
just, yeah, squeeze my face, try to make the sound. We would go walk to the Chinese market, which was on the same street on Colvin Avenue, and
Uh-huh.
just point out fruits and vegetables and meat and talk,
Oh,
like, so it was like a very special thing. And I would write everything down in, not pinyin, just writing it down in funny looking English, to try to make it, uh, help myself remember the names of things. And
yeah.
so it wasn't very a formulaic or structured way of learning, but
Mhm.
it was Chinese language study
I see.
in a unique way, maybe.
Hmm.
And and then
It
after
sounds
that, I
like
would
a
take.
really good way. It sounds like a really practical way.
Yeah, it was very practical in a sense. And I mean, again, there may be methodologies that are more, appropriate, but it was definitely a wonderful way for me at that time to have a connection with a person, my shimu, and who I was very close to. Um, and then regular training, and then after training I would take another private lesson in martial arts, with usually with her. Actually, people didn't know that I she
Oh,
was the one who I she kind of took over from my teacher at one point, her husband, and said he's mine now, and worked very closely with me. So that was how I originally started with Chinese. And then
mm,
I spent about 4 years in China, um, intermittently. So like
mm,
8 months, and then I would go back to school in the U.S., and then I would go back for the summer to China, and then I would
mm.
go back to another academic year. I did. So it's kind of a little. It's not a clean sort of sequence of what years were in China and where they were, but I
Yeah.
did like initially a year at Beijing Sports University, um, and then in every morning we were training, every other afternoon we were training, and then the afternoons we didn't train, I was doing Chinese language.
Oh,
And
okay.
yes, and it was so that gave me a little bit of a foundation. Um, and then when I went to college the following year in the U.S., I started again. Like I did my minor, I minored in Chinese,
Oh,
and
okay.
then yep,
So what was your major?
my major was international studies. And so just
Oh,
I did mostly politics, like international relations
yeah.
and politics. And then I spent 2 more summers in China
Mm.
before my senior year. I was awarded a Chinese government scholarship and
Oh,
went to China at Sichuan Sichuan University,
oh,
and ride my bike every day after classes to Chengdu Tiyu Xueyuan and training with the team there. So it was a
Wow.
very sort of unique experience. There were other foreigners, many foreigners, obviously, at Sichuan University studying Chinese language there. But once I was out of class on my bike and headed to practice, I was the only foreigner in the gym training
Mhm.
at Chengdu Sports University. And so
Mhm.
that was, I felt like a very unique opportunity to be included, and to have that opportunity to train with them. And I took that very seriously. Um,
Mhm.
I wouldn't, other classmates would travel during the weekends. I never traveled. I felt like it would be a little disrespectful to train during the week with all these guys and then on the weekends go have fun when they were still training hard.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Mhm.
and then my coach at that time basically said, "You're a foreigner. You can't be here. But
Oh,
as long as you pay me the money and don't get in the way, you can train." And so I
okay.
was so accepted because it is a professional institution. You can't just walk in and be there. Having the right connections, as you know, is very important. Um,
Mhm.
my coach, another coach of mine in the USA, was from graduated from Chengdu Jiujitsu and Beijing Jiu so they were
Oh,
connected. So I did have that relationship, and then so yeah, it was just a special opportunity that I had to be there. And then after graduating, I decided I wanted to go to grad school, and it
mhm.
was between I wanted to do Chinese, and I went to Ohio State, and they have what's known as a flagship program, which was
Oh,
a U.S. government sponsored program for I'm now forgetting, but the key languages like Arabic, Farsi,
uh-huh.
Chinese, and so they have those relationships with these schools.
Mhm.
Um, and so it was a 2-year program, 1 year in the U.S. and 1 year back in China at Nanjing Daxue, where we direct enrolled in university there. And so we all learn Chinese, but everybody has their own area of focus. For
Okay.
example, like kids were doing finance and
Mhm.
Chinese. Some people were doing literature
Oh,
in Chinese. I was doing
mhm.
politics in Chinese. So
Wow.
once we got to Nanjing University, we all would enroll in different classes related to the areas of study that we were interested in.
Wow. And those classes were all in Chinese.
Yeah, yep.
Wow, that
And
sounds really hard. I
yeah,
don't think I
well,
could do that.
yeah, it, in some ways it's hard, but I think that we were supposed to be held to the same standard, but I felt like it was still very easy. They were very understanding of us
Yeah.
being for yeah. So, but it was good to be involved, to be there, to be in class discussions, um, and then every day after school, again, same thing, ride my bike and go train at another. It was a Nanjing Shi Shaonian Wushu Dui, so
Uh-huh.
a youth team, and that's actually one of the things people don't know about China, or training. They always think that you have to go to Shaolin Temple
Oh,
or the best teams like Beijing Wushu Dui, and you will
okay.
get the best training. Actually, in my experience, this is not true. I did
Mhm.
train with several top teams, and
Mhm.
my experience was that if you really want to train hard, you don't go to the best. You go to the kids' teams that are outside of the best areas, because those
Oh,
kids are getting trained very hard in hopes that they will be one day taken on and recruited by the top teams. So
that makes
once
sense.
you're at the professional teams, the lifestyle is a little more relaxed. You've
More
already
laid
put
back.
in the hard work. Yeah, that
Yeah.
you've all now you're like refining everything, but you have you have a certain level of conditions of living. You
Mm-hmm.
have a certain level of respect from the instructors. No one's
Mm.
so um, when it's really those youth teams that are but just kind of sideline that, like,
Mhm.
training with youth teams is very intense, but also that was kind of what made me fall in love with working with kids. I loved
Mhm.
training side by side with these kids, and I have a lot of respect for those kids. So when I transitioned to coaching and teaching kids and working with kids, I felt somewhat comfortable, like having trained around kids for so long.
Yeah. So did you always think like you wanted to be a teacher or you wanted to be a coach, or did you also think
No,
like I wanted
I
to
wanted,
have a studio? Like, what was your plan, or did you have a
yeah.
plan?
So I wanted to be in the CIA. I thought I was going to become like a
Oh,
secret. I really wanted to be actually because I went to school outside of Washington D.C.
okay.
and um I did my undergrad at George Mason University, which is just outside in Virginia, and
Mm-hmm.
then I think my second in my first year at OSU, somebody from the CIA came to speak about careers, and
Okay.
I actually just wanted a desk job. I thought it would be interesting to like read the newspaper. There's something called an open source media analyst, and I thought
Okay.
it would be like fun just to read about China every day and study it and continue to learn about it and the people and what they're. So you're not necessarily in this case. It wasn't to be a spy. It was
Yeah.
to just again try to read as much from the news so that you could
Mhm.
understand what was maybe going on politically or
Oh.
economically. And so I just thought that what a wonderful thing. I love to learn about it already. They have a career where you could just learn about it every day.
Mhm.
That's your job, is to be the most knowledgeable person on the subject. Um, and then at one point I was interviewing with some different agencies, and they kind of said, you'll never go back. Once you are working with us, it would be too
Oh.
complicated. And I realized I don't know if I don't ever want to go back. And then
Oh. Yeah.
I got very confused,
It's
and
like
I was
joining the
looking at
mafia or something, right? You
yeah,
can't get
yeah,
out once you're in.
yeah. Once you're in, you can't get out. And then
Wow.
I
Mhm.
looked at different career opportunities in China, and I got nervous about what would my life be like if I ended up living and working in China.
Mhm.
Um, and I got an offer from like a water treatment company that was hiring. They needed a salespeople from an American company to represent their company in China, doing small towns in southwestern China. And I was like, what would the life be like just going from small town to small town, talking about water treatment and wastewater treatment? And it just sounded like I don't know if that would be for me. And I real, you know, everybody was saying, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, I want to do martial arts, but that's not a career." And
Mhm. Mhm.
one thing led to another, and my friend was an engineer, and he quit his job and opened up a school. And he said, do you want to partner and open up more schools with me?" And I said, "Yes." You know, and I was like,
Oh.
"But I don't know." And I talked to my parents, and they said, "Do it. You need to do this. This is," and it all fell apart. Nothing manifested, nothing worked. And in the end, my dad said, "Do you need him?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, then just do it yourself." And I said, "Okay." And so there was like a lot of different things that we tried to consider, but ended up just moving back from Washington area back to Albany and doing it here, and couldn't be happier.
Well, the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history, as they say.
Wow, that is so cool. That's a wild story. And now I understand the politics, right? Like I was like, oh,
Yeah,
why are you studying politics? Because I was thinking maybe you
I
were doing business, right? And then that would kind of make sense if you
yeah,
had this planned all along. But it's amazing
I
how it twists and turns.
Yeah, I read so many, even in high school, like 13, 14. I just was fascinated by China. I think my guess is that in addition to the martial arts, interest, uh, is that maybe it was the most different thing than where I was growing up, in literally the
Mhm.
middle of nowhere. You look out my window, there's no people, there's no houses, there's no cars, there's nothing. There's just farms, fields, woods. And I maybe, my the demographics of my town of 1,000 people were 99.9 repeating percent white. And maybe China just, my guess is that maybe it was just the most exotic, different, interesting, far away place that I could imagine at the time. And so, but
Mhm.
I used to read books, by people who had written about the cultural revolution, and I thought it was just interesting. And when they would give talks, my dad would drive me, and I would sit in and listen to their talks about these things, and from various authors, and just not because it was related to anything I was doing at school, just because it was interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing that they supported you so much. It sounded like that they
Yeah,
were always there like from the beginning, and then even when you
yeah,
opened the studio, like they were like, "Yes, do it." That's great. That's so amazing to
yeah.
hear.
Yeah, and so I encourage kids to follow a passion, but I don't know what it would have been like to have an interest and not have a parent's support, or
Mm.
to have an interest and not, or to have them actively, you know, not want you to pursue something. So I'm sort of, I don't have that experience. So all I can do is, encourage kids to find a passion, and then, hopefully find a mentor if it's not their family. Hopefully it is, hopefully they do have good, people in their corner. But there may be other people that can help. For example, I had great assistance from university professors in
Mhm.
addition to my parents. That was, they were the ones who were helping me get credits and apply to scholarships and have other opportunities as well.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a parent, but it's nice when it is. But
Yeah. Yeah. I know sometimes, I mean, especially maybe like Asian parents, Chinese parents, like they want the best for their kids. So it's
yeah,
not like, they're not necessarily like steering them away from their passion because they don't love them, but it's more like,
sure,
I'm afraid you're gonna not have a job, or like, I'm afraid you're
sure.
not gonna, so I think a lot of it comes from the fear of like their kids not doing well. So then they want
Well,
something like predictable and stable, So
sure.
I can understand that as well, but hopefully more parents can catch on to the fact that,
Right.
if the kid really
Eh,
likes to do something, then they will
right.
probably really be good at it if they enjoy it.
Right. And maybe supporting your kid to have a passion doesn't mean helping them figure out how to make a career. It might be helping them understand how they can take something they're interested in and combine it with something practical,
Yeah.
um, or encourage them, like my parents, to do something academically while pursuing their passion, and then having an option later on, maybe where they can decide. Because I actually don't think that everybody should make their passion their profession. Like, that's not necessarily for everybody. Not everybody has to turn what they like into a job and try to survive on that financially. Like that I've heard different ideas, and I think that that's probably true. Maybe for some people, keep it your passion, keep it your keep it something that you enjoy. I know a
That's
lot of people who martial arts instructors. They open up a school and then they fall out of love with teaching martial arts because they don't, or they're really
yes.
good at doing it. They're not really good at teaching it, or you're really good at an aspect of your work, but not really good at running a business.
Hmm.
And so there are things to consider. But with kids myself, I feel like I whatever they're interested in at some point, I want to help them pursue that interest. But again, we want to give them maybe a backup plan. I
Yeah.
found.
Yeah, sometimes when your passion becomes your job, then it's not fun anymore, right?
Yeah,
Sad.
yeah.
Yeah.
People get burned out all the time, and I went through a little phase of that, and literally someone reminded me. They were like, "You love what you do," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I do. I do love what I do." So yeah, but yeah, I think that's probably not all that uncommon, you know.
Yeah. So did you have to then learn the whole like how to run a business part, like getting
Yeah,
students and advertising? Like
yes, yes.
it
So
just
that
seems
was
like
that.
that would have been a very difficult thing as well.
Yeah. So my dad is a business owner. He retired at the same time that I opened up my school, and he was very involved in sort of helping me, navigate, or sort of just not. He wasn't doing any work, but just on the phone with me every
Yeah.
day, like, what did you get done today? Who did you? How are you advertising? What about the sign? Well, actually, he was very involved with like some of the physical stuff, like signage and carpeting installation, and like some of
Oh
the
yeah,
the
that's what
yeah,
he's good at.
yes, and the contracts and attorneys and some of the stuff that you have to kind of get set up in advance,
Yeah. Right.
along with your business. But in terms of like the marketing business side of things, just yeah, that initially there was a lot of sort of like, what um, software management will you use to process credit cards and all those types of, again, logos and website design, and oh, you have photos, so now you have to, there's so many different, but yeah, uh, every single website, from social media websites and Instagram and Yelp and Google, and how you get reviews, and yeah, there's a ton of other things. So I do think as a business owner, it's fun that when you want, you can explore other aspects. But honestly, I'm so in love with teaching. I just like sweating. I like being on the floor with people and doing that. That's actually my favorite part of the job.
Sure.
Whereas I think a lot of people, they kind of maybe get burnt out teaching and they want to transition more toward the business side and focus on growing the business and making money. Um, so they're not mutually exclusive, but they are different. And I have
Yeah.
I particularly, I do like being, I call it boots on the ground. Like I like being in the action.
Yeah, but being a, I would say like solopreneur, right? Like I don't know if you
Yeah.
have also other partners, but like I also have my own business, and I too is like I love talking to students. I love working with students, for their college applications, that kind of thing.
Yes.
But when it comes to the business side, it's like this is just something I have to do because like
Right.
running a website, things like that. So I totally get what you're saying.
Yes. 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 So I don't have any partners. Luckily enough, my wife has become involved and she is very capable, organized,
That's so
and
great.
yes, so she's been very helpful
Yeah,
in doing
I know.
some
I
of
see
the
her at the studio all the time with the
yeah.
baby.
Yes, yes. So hopefully next year she'll be coming in with Gia to do a little bit of practice herself. But in general,
Nice.
she's really sophisticated with the computer side of things, and that's streamlined and made things a lot easier. So I always come back to like having a great team. I don't have any partners, I don't have any employees, but I have a
Mhm.
lot of people who make it uh, much better. Like
Mhm.
my wife, senior students who cover classes and teach and help and support the school in a lot of different ways. So it's I might be a solo entrepreneur, but
Mhm.
luckily there are many good people who are involved, um, who make it better.
That's how the team makes the dream work, or the
Yeah,
team. What is it called?
teamwork makes
Teamwork
dream
makes the
work.
dream work, right? You gotta have
Yeah,
your network and your support. So even if you're kind of the main person, but having
right.
that's awesome. And it's a great opportunity for those students to
Yeah,
lead and teach and have that experience. That's so great.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think the last thing I want to ask you is just, I know that, as we were moving, unfortunately, away from you guys, like physically, and of course, I hope we can stay in touch, but I know your
Yes.
school has transitioned from just Chinese martial arts to also incorporating other martial arts. So do you want to talk a little bit
Yeah,
more about
sure. So yeah, actually, this is like something within the Chinese community. Like I just talked to, uh, I've talked to several people, but
that? Hmm.
the conversation doesn't always go in this direction. Um, because yeah, I feel like I did open up the Chinese Martial Arts Academy. I spent 10 years very focused on Chinese martial arts. And actually, once I started teaching, in a certain sense, I did become, I changed my focus and I began to explore other kinds of martial arts. And I needed to do that for myself. So all day,
Yeah.
basically, I would train other things. And then I would come back in the evening and teach Chinese Kung Fu. And I never change what I teach. So that was one thing for my Chinese teachers: adhere to the characteristics of the style. I won't
Hmm.
teach things that aren't, when I'm teaching Chinese martial arts, that's exactly what we're teaching. Nothing but, this very specific thing. So I try not to get muddy the water or blend things. But we did change our name to Breaking Wave Martial Arts, and I did become a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm sort of getting close to my black belt in Kyokushin Karate. And I've fallen in love with another style of martial arts as well. So I just continue to, I kind of want to leave no stone unturned. It's maybe like an artist or somebody who's in love with languages, like everything has something very unique to offer. And I don't want to, I kind of like, or maybe it's like the grass is always greener, or maybe I have ADD. Like everything just seems so interesting to me, like the way they do it, their culture, their techniques, um,
Hmm.
their spirit or philosophy like behind the art is very interesting to me. So I kind of keep exploring different things, but not just touching. I want to go deep into different styles. Um, and I think that each style has, yeah, something very unique to offer. So we started one style at our school called Kyokushin Karate, which is called in Chinese called Ji Zhen Kong Shou Dao. So like they call it the ultimate truth, or like Taiji de Ji, Zhen Jia de Zhen.
I see.
And it's got a very different, uh, like I would call it spirit It's very
Mhm.
hard, very strong, very fighting oriented. Um, and I feel like the training methodology is very different than Chinese martial arts. The Chinese, specifically the kind that we practice, which are so maybe technical, um, and um, how do I say it? Like just in general, though, I feel like it's a nice complement or supplement. And I've seen so many kids that just I wanted to teach them martial arts, and I wasn't able to find a way to be successful through Chinese martial arts that I practice.
Mhm.
They were maybe starting very late, overweight, and the thought of trying to help those kids like learn how to do cartwheels and
The
splits and
aerial.
front rolls, air like it is very hard. Or maybe even adults, a 20, anybody over 30 might struggle with wushu or doing it the way they want to do it, because we can modify anything. Everybody can, it can be different for everybody, but that's not what everybody wants. Some people want to fit the mold, and that's not
Mhm.
an easy mold to fit. um,
Yeah.
so I like this one, another aspect of training focused on maybe more fighting, and doesn't need to do any acrobatics, don't need to be flexible, but you need to have a good, strong spirit.
Mhm.
And then I feel like I can help more people with martial arts in a different way.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so it did take a little turn, and I think it will continue to, I don't think it will I'm not who I was 10 years ago when we started CMAA, and
Mhm.
Breaking Wave I don't suspect will be what it is now in 10 years from now. So that's one of the exciting things about being an entrepreneur, is having the flexibility. No one can tell me
Mhm.
you can't do this, you can't, we're not going to have that program, it doesn't fit our model. So it's wonderful to have the ability to implement things that I believe in.
Mhm.
Um, if I think it's valuable and I want to do it, and my sort of one of my additional criteria is I have children, and I think, is it good for them? Do I want it for them? And if my answer is
Mhm.
I would want it for them, then I feel like then other people want it. So I try to remove myself, because I
Wow.
may be biased. So I do try to remove myself and say, is it what you want or what people want? This is a business. It's not about what you want. It's about what your students, what the community needs. But then I come back to, well, if you want it for your kids, and you believe it's beneficial, you would put your kid here then rather than somewhere else, and use their time because you think it's valuable, then I think other people would understand and find it valuable too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just love that because I think, being curious and being open to learning new things is so important for like any career. Like even if you're
Yeah,
not a or just like because the world is changing, right? I mean, now there's AI and there's gonna be the next
yeah.
thing, right? So if you don't continue to keep learning, then you're just gonna fall back.
And I hope my students see that. I like to show them that, like, oh, I'm a yellow belt in judo, I'm a yellow belt in karate, I got my green belt today, I'm gonna get, that, like,
Mhm.
hopefully, they joke, they told me, I had a bunch of my black belts over the other day, they said, uh it's like you already won the game, and now you're just choosing side missions, or like
Yeah,
these
like
little,
in the video
like
game,
you
right?
already you beat it, and now you're going on to just play more games. But I want them to know, like, it doesn't even matter if martial arts. Like, my wife is doing the same thing. She got her PhD, and now she's graduating next month from UPenn, with to get her master's degree. She went back to
Mhm.
school. Like, it's okay to sort of win.
Yeah.
Where would you go after your PhD? And she's like, oh, I'm going to just go a different direction and do something like. So she and I kind of have very different areas of interest, but I feel like it's kind of a similar mindset, that it's okay to go in different directions, and it's so you don't have to. There's not only one direction or one trend. You can take different paths, and so I hope that can be for them in the future, whether it be martial arts or something I would think completely different. That it's okay to restart or change directions. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's never too late. That's what I did, right? Like
yeah,
I did
right.
engineering for many years and now I'm doing education. And who knows, I was also working on nonprofit, like international relations stuff. So it's like, okay. And then it's just a lot of fun, and you just never know sometimes where life leads you. And I think a
Right.
lot of kids now, like when they're in high school, right, they're like, oh, I'm gonna pick a career and I'm gonna do this career, right? That's no longer the case. It's
Right.
like you pick a major, you learn something, you might work in that for a couple years, but after that, there could be a lot of other opportunities. So
Right.
sometimes it's a little bit scary or daunting to think like, oh, I gotta pick one thing to do for the rest of my life, and I don't think it's really that
No.
that scary because you don't have to. You can change.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That's
Awesome.
that.
Well, thank you. Yeah. This
Well,
is
thank
so
you
great.
very
I'm
much.
so happy
Yeah.
to talk with you. Do you have any last
Likewise.
words or last thoughts for kids who might be thinking about college or thinking about their careers right now? Like, what would you say to your students, for example? The ones that are ready to graduate. Like, do you have any words of advice?
No, just because again, I do think that everybody's path can be unique. So I don't really even want to tell. I would. My advice might be different for every single one of them.
That's true.
But
Very, very individual based, right?
yeah, yeah. But maybe hopefully, believe in yourself, and also hopefully, you can find a good team, of friends, maybe teachers, uh, family that can help you uh, navigate the uncertainty of it all. So you don't have to be alone if you believe in yourself. But even online, maybe there's a community of people who can help support you and figure
Absolutely.
things out. Because again, there's a lot of what uncertainty, but like you said, nothing's permanent, and there's you can go in so many different directions that hopefully with some good assistance, you can find the right path for yourself.
Thank you so much, Lucas. So nice having you. Best of luck to you with your studio. Although we can't be there in person anymore, we moved so far away. But I just hope the best for all your students and having your business grow. More exciting things coming along the way, I'm sure.
Thank you so much for your time, Jen.